All right, welcome to class. Here's a quiz that I'm sending home with you. A, besides 6/4 chords that arise through bass arpeggiation or melodic bass line, lists 3 other types of 6/4 chords discussed in Chapter 9. B, with Roman numerals, show a good harmonization of the bass line below, being sure to include a good example of one of each of the 6/4 chord types that you listed above, and show where each one occurs. Remember, we went over this once and I told you they've set you up for success with this. Remember, there's a certain type of 6/4 chord that needs repeated notes, another type of 6/4 chord that needs stepwise motion, and they've given you all of that. All right. C, analyze this excerpt with Roman numerals and identify the types of any 6/4 chords that are used. And D, add 3 upper parts to each example, create a good 4-part texture, and identify the types of 6/4 chords that are used. Questions, comments, concerns, friends with questions, private messages in the chat. Max, I'm so sorry I missed you. I knew you were here. I saw your face. All right. Questions? We're good? Excellent. I'll get that up later today.
Wait, Doc, that's the whole quiz?
That's the whole quiz.
Oh, okay. Cool.
You want me to make it harder?
No. It's good. It's gonna be a good quiz. Nice and challenging.
Yes, it's all good. Don't need to
I,
tweet it.
I just wanted to make sure you weren't pulling a fast one on us like we were gonna do, and there's gonna be 200 other questions.
No, I think that's enough, don't you?
I think that's good.
All right.
The quiz,
Yeah.
not a test.
Yeah, the test is coming later. All right. Last time we were in chapter 10, this is true. Sharing the wrong screen. Here we go. So, I'm just going to put a reminder out there. If your cameras aren't on, you're not getting credit for being here today. Unless you've emailed me a reason, and a couple of you have. Just putting that out there. Okay. Last time we talked about motives and phrases. Do you remember this? What did we decide a motive was?
Wasn't the motive the overall idea of a piece of music?
It's the shortest, smallest identifiable musical idea, right? And we talked about motives can have rhythmic patterns, pitch patterns, or both. And they used the example of Beethoven's Fifth. You can take the pitch out, and you've got the rhythm pattern. You've got 2 different pitches over 4 different notes. And then we talked about phrases, and we talked about sub-phrases. Do you remember this? And we had the conversation. We had a conversation that it was subjective. Yeah? All right. We listened to that weird Haydn example. It could have been 4 measures, but then it had that little tail on it. Remember that? All right. Here's a good word. Elision. The last note of one phrase sometimes serves as the first note of the next phrase, a process referred to as elision. An even more extreme overlap can be seen by looking back at example 10-3, in which the cadence in the fourth measure of the introduction serves also as the first measure of the first phrase of that song. So let's listen to that. Schumann, let me know if you can't hear it.
Example 10-3.
So, what was the last chord became the first chord of the new phrase. Sharing is caring, unless it comes to Band-Aids. So does that make sense? One more time, listen to this long
Example
chord.
10-3.
So kind of weird to start on a 5-4-3, yeah? Whoa. Okay, where the devil did I go? Okay. So, elision. The last note of one phrase becomes the first of the next. Questions? We good? Mozart and Die Freude. All the concepts we've presented so far in this chapter are well illustrated in 10-11. This deceptively simple song was composed by Mozart when he was 11. This is the part that's supposed to make you feel good about yourself. The singer doubles the right hand of the piano part throughout, and a nice effect is obtained in performance. In the left hand of the piano, if the left hand part of the piano is doubled by a cello or a bassoon. What would you rather sing with, a cello or a bassoon? Controversy.
Cello, most definitely.
But bassoons are like unicorns.
Bassoon.
Yeah, but I'm a cellist, so you sound better.
Example
You could just be a true
10-11.
boss and play with a tuba.
Didn't even mark the one cadence. What's this?
Oh, cadential.
Of course, we have to put the brackets around it because it's not real. So we have a cadential at the end. We've got a deceptive cadence here. We have an iac coming from a 7/7 half cadence here. Iac, because the soprano does not have do. We went to G minor, so we needed a G in the soprano, but we don't get it till here. Pack here, because we get do and soprano back when we were in C. Somehow we ended in F major. They didn't officially. Oh, there it is. They gave us the F major there. We had deceptive cadence there.
What was
Iac there.
the cool effect they were trying to show?
I don't know because I didn't hear cello or bassoon. Half cadence there. Deceptive cadence there. Let's read it again what they said. They said the singer doubles the right hand of the piano part, which was played on a harpsichord, and a nice effect is obtained if if the left hand of the piano part is doubled by a cello or bassoon. And then they're like, yeah, we're not spending the money to do that on our recording with you. But it'd be cool if we did. That's what I gather from it.
I thought I heard a cello, but
Did you? Let's listen again. Maybe there was.
I didn't hear a cello. I thought I heard a horn of some sort.
There was something
So maybe.
other than a
Example,
piano down there.
Something?
10, 11.
Yeah.
That's a cello. Sounds electric, but it's there.
Yeah, probably a synth.
Sounds like the love child of a bassoon and a cello.
It really
Anyway.
does.
So cadences happen every 4 measures, which is nice. It's very structural. You can see what's going on. There's only 2 lines, so the chords are necessarily incomplete, but the implied harmonies at the cadences are clear enough and have been labeled for you. The cadence illustrates all the types discussed in the chapter, with the exception of the PC. What's the PC?
Is that a plagal?
That is a plagal cadence, 4/1, right? Notice that 2 cadences occur in the key of the dominant and 1 occurs in the supertonic G. Because we do not lose track aurally of the key of F as we listen to the song, it would be appropriate to refer to measures 13 through 24 as embellishments of 5 and 2 rather than as true change of tonal center. All the cadences are listed in the following table. Awesome. Questions? Now the fun part.
Do we have to state the key our cadences come in all the time?
Yes, you will. But it'll be blatantly obvious when you've got your Roman numerals, right? Hopefully. Unless they try to trick you and change keys or pretend they're changing keys. Yeah. Many phrases of this song can be heard as consisting of two subphrases. For instance, measures 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are two segments that combine to make the first phrase. Although most people would agree that measures 1 through 2 segment is too short to be a phrase, the distinction is not always clear, and it is perfectly possible for two informed musicians to disagree about this and other examples. I might add, it's also perfectly possible for two uninformed musicians to disagree about this and other examples, but just whatever. Andy Freud also contains motives, of course, ulterior motives. Two of the most important are primarily rhythmic. The dotted quarter followed by 2/16 and 4/8 notes. Don't get confused with their period. They are not dotting that eighth note. That is the end of their sentence. Oh, boy. The grace note in measure 22 is performed as an eighth note on beat 1, so measure 22 is an instance of a second motive. Let's go back and look at all this fun stuff. So they're saying that measures 1 through 2 and 3 and 4 are two segments that combine to make the first phrase.
Example 10, 11.
That was subphrase 1. Here's subphrase 2. What do you think?
I'll believe it.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I think so. Considering how they're used later in the piece.
How they use which?
How they use them.
Yeah.
If they were used together throughout the piece, then maybe it should be called one phrase, but they're kind of used separately.
So remember my professor, Dr. Boren's definition of a phrase? He said the smallest, what did he say? The smallest structural unit of music with a beginning, middle, and end punctuated by a cadence is a phrase. That's why I like that definition, because you can see all of that in measures 1 through 4. Got our deceptive cadence at the end. We have a long note in the middle. And it works, right?
Example 10, 11.
Cool. Every 4 measures ish, we have a cadence. That's what's nice about classical music. It's so predictable and it's so symmetrical oftentimes. Predictable can be good. All right, let's look for this motive. It's all over the place. Are we seeing it? And they're calling this a motive. Cool. Are we okay?
Wait, Doc, I have kind of a dumb question.
I love dumb
So-
questions.
For the bass line, it's just repeating eighth notes over and over again. Would that really be considered the motive? If
I
it's just
love that you just said that because I
the
said
same thing over and over again.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you want to discredit it as a motive?
I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not a motive because it very well could be. I was just curious.
I think they're going with the pitches.
Say again. What about pitches?
I think it's less about the eighth notes and more about like the pitches in the bass.
I think that I circled the wrong thing. That's what I think.
I don't know. I think the eighth notes give a definite sort of theme.
I'm going to change my tune because I was circling the bass. And again, what is the definition of a motive? Well, maybe not. I'm
It
changing
can
my change.
only be treble clef.
No.
I mean, the bass is not as melodic as the melody.
Yeah. Well, you
let's
can
say
have
this.
motive just
gonna
with pitch, with rhythm,
gonna go-
and or both. So
I'm going to go back to my professor's definition of motive because I like it better. His definition of motive is the smallest unit of music with distinctive rhythmic and or melodic content. I like his definition because then it allows for the bass to have the motive because it's rhythmic. And our book kind of said that. It said, yeah, it did say that. It's good. The motive is the smallest identifiable musical idea. The motive can consist of a pitch pattern or a rhythmic pattern or both. So in that case, yeah, it's a driving bass. Chug, 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 chug. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Are we cool with that?
Yes, thank you for clearing it up. I was just a bit confused.
Me too. Oh, now we got to talk about the period. Oh, the dreaded period. All right, here we go. Period forms. Certain patterns for organizing phrases or groups of phrases are so effective that they are found over and over again in music, literature. One such pattern is the larger structural unit called the period. A period typically consists of two phrases in an antecedent, consequent, or question-answer relationship. That relationship being established by means of a stronger cadence at the end of the second phrase. The most commonly encountered patterns are the following. Period. Phrase 1 ending in a half cadence. Phrase 2 ending in a pack or iac. Or, period, phrase 1 ending in an iac, phrase 2 ending in a pack. Notice that by definition, the phrase endings in a period must be different. If both phrases are identical, the result is not a period, but a repeated phrase. Repetition is important in tonal music, but it does not contribute to the growth of a musical form. We use the term parallel period if both phrases begin with similar or identical material, even if that material is embellished. Example 10-12 illustrates a parallel period. You might hear 2 measure phrases in this excerpt instead of the 4 measure phrases we have analyzed. If so, this would be a parallel double period, which is discussed later in this chapter. So what are we listening for? We're listening for a parallel period. Both are going to begin with similar or identical material, even if it's embellished.
Example 10-12.
What'd you think? I don't like my lines. I'm going to change them. I think that's more correct. Structurally, beat-wise, symmetrically. What do you think? Did you notice both phrases started the same?
Example 10, 12.
The only thing that's different is the cadence. A formal diagram of example 10-12 would show the relationship between the phrases by labeling them A and A prime. Little apostrophe means prime. Sometimes the parallel relationship between the phrases is not so obvious. In example 10-13, the melody of the second phrase begins like the first, but it is a third lower. Sequential relationships like this one are similar enough to be labeled a parallel period. The antecedent consequent relationship here is established by the IAC in measures 3 and 4. 5, 4, 3 going to 1 with the scale degree 3 in the melody over the tonic chord. And the pack in measures 7 and 8.
Example 10, 13.
I loves you, Porgy. Don't let him take me. Don't let him handle me and drive me mad. If you can keep me, I want to stay here with you forever, and I'll be glad.
All right, what was that all about? They're saying that the melody started a third lower. They're calling this a sequential relationship, calling it similar enough to be labeled a parallel period. Antecedent consequent relationship here is established by the IAC. Measures 3 and 4. Pink box there. We have scale degree 3 in the melody, so it can't be a pack. And we have a perfect authentic cadence at the end. We go 5 to 1, 5 to 1, and we have do in our soprano. Are you with me? Should we recap the last 5 minutes? What just happened?
So it's parallel just because it's rhythmically the same.
Yeah, and they're saying that if you do a sequence and have it a third lower, it's close enough. Close enough for jazz, as they like to say. I don't know. Whoa, come back. All right, so we talked about periods. The important thing is that these cadences cannot match. They need to be different. If they do match, it's a repeated phrase. Then we talked about the parallel period.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For phrases, wait, can you scroll up a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So for periods, is that like A section, B section sort of thing? Then you have all these phrases in them?
That gets into dangerous material. I'm not going to say that. Usually, what we refer to as A sections are larger. Yeah? Your A section is going to have several phrases, I hope. Unless it's a really...
Well, that's why do you only have 2 phrases in a period?
Yes. For now.
Okay.
Because you have to have the antecedent consequent relationship. Now that might change later down the road. I reserve the book's right to change their mind on this.
Does the period always end with a pack?
Or an IAC. As in this first example's diagram. Right? Yeah. I'm sensing some uneasiness in the force out there. And I just want to tell you, stress less. It's going to be all right. Not a big deal yet. Okay, so we had a period. We talked about a repeated phrase. We talked about a parallel period. What's the parallel period? Parallel period starts with the same or similar material. Even though it can be embellished. Like the Schubert example. Everything was the same except for the cadence. And then we talked about a parallel period. Parallel period shows a relationship between the first and the second. So it's not identical like the Schubert, but it's parallel enough that they're still calling it a parallel period. This is some of that subjectivity coming in, right? So you don't have to be a total purist and say, they're down a third. It's not a parallel. They're saying it's okay. They're giving you some latitude. Yeah? All right. A period in which the phrase beginnings are not similar is called a contrasting period. And here is Beethoven with his Violin Sonata Opus 12, number 1, third movement to illustrate such a contrasting period.
Example 10:14.
Beautiful. So totally started different. We started with this huge leap in the violin part of a sixth, looks like. And here we went straight up the scale to start the next phrase.
Example 10:14.
You'll also notice that the accompaniment part is totally different. Same rhythmic boom, chuck, chuck, boom, chuck, chuck, but different harmonies. Here we're on a tonic chord. Root position. Here we go to a 5 what?
Six, four? No. Just kidding.
5-4-3. Here we are on a 1-6. And we stay on the 1-6. And we go to the 2-6. So totally different, yeah? Question in the chat from my friend says, would the rhythm be motive? I would say you could consider that a rhythmic motive in the bass, in the piano part, yeah. Remember, the motive is the smallest musical example. The smallest musical idea. Smallest unit of music with distinctive rhythm and or melodic content. Yep. One more time.
Example 10:14.
So totally different, right? Not parallel at all, right? Totally new material. A common way of expanding a two-phrase period is by repeating the antecedent phrase as in AAB. Now notice, Catherine, these are little lowercase AABs and not capital AB, just so we're not confused when we were talking about A section and B section earlier for a second. We're going to label our little phrases with A's and B's. So we're going to repeat the antecedent phrase and make it an AAB, or we're going to repeat the consequent phrase and make it an ABB. It is also possible to repeat both and have an AABB, which is not the same as a repeated period, which is ABAB. Notice there's no mention of my favorite band, ABBA here. ABBA. All right. A genuine third phrase period, however, has three different phrases. Oh, snap. Two antecedents and a consequence, or one antecedent and two consequence as determined by the cadences. In example 10-15 in the Marriage of Figaro, there are two antecedents because the first two phrases end with half cadences. Are you ready? Hold on.
Example 10:15.
Two half cadences. What do you think about that?
Example 10:15.
So 4 measures, 4 measures, 4 measures. First 4, second 4 end with a half cadence. And then we get our pack. Are we all right with that? Is that legal? All right, here we go. On to the double period. A double period consists of 4 phrases in 2 pairs, the cadence at the end of the second pair being stronger than the cadence at the end of the first pair. So we have 4 phrases, the second of which ends in a half or an iac, half cadence or an iac, and then the second phrase at the end of the second cadence at the end of the fourth phrase is something stronger, either a pack or an iac. It's got to be a pack if you had an iac for phrase 2. There are several things that should be pointed out about this diagram. First, notice that this structure is much like a period, with the only difference being that each half consists of a pair of phrases instead of one phrase. Also notice that the first 2 phrases will probably not form a period according to our original definition. So a double period does not usually consist of 2 periods. Finally, notice that a repeated period is not the same as a double period because a double period requires contrasting cadences. So many P words: phrase, period, parallel period. There's too many P's. Double periods are called parallel or contrasting according to whether the melodic material that begins the 2 halves of the double period is similar. Example 10-16 illustrates a parallel double period, and its structure is outlined in the following diagram. Parallel double period. We have an antecedent consequent relationship with phrase A, phrase B, phrase A, phrase B prime. Half cadences all along the way until we finally get our pack at measure 16.
Example 10-16.
Are we cool with that? Half cadence.
So I thought a period had to end with an iac or a pack. These are ending with half cadences. So why isn't it called a 4-part period? I don't understand the double period. I thought it had to. It's kind of hard to identify.
All right, let's go back. A period typically consists of 2 phrases, and that relationship showing a stronger cadence at the end of the second phrase. The most commonly encountered patterns do end in a pack or an iac, but nothing says that it has to. So fast forward back to Beethoven here. A double period consists typically of 4 phrases in 2 pairs. The cadence at the end of the second pair has to be stronger than the cadence at the end of the first pair. Several things should be noted. First, the structure is much like a period, with the only difference being that each half consists here of a pair of phrases instead of one phrase. Also notice that the first two phrases will probably not form a period according to our original definition. So a double period does not usually consist of two periods. Finally, notice that a repeated period is not the same as a double period because a double period requires contrasting cadences. So what are we calling this? A double period. We do have the contrasting cadences, the antecedent consequence relationship. Ask your question again, Pete.
No, I mean it's clear now. I mean,
Okay.
I just thought that
I wanted to make sure I answered it. It's
yeah,
confusing stuff, isn't it? I mean, it really, you got to really think. Okay, so let's listen to that again. See if you can identify the phrases.
Example 10:16.
I mean, this is typical Beethoven. He never wants to go home. It took us 4 tries to get home. Right?
I feel like Pete just asked this, but is it a period if you have a half cadence and then a half cadence for the...
Sure. So what the book starts out with is they start out with the typical, most commonly found periods, but it doesn't have to all be that.
Okay.
So what they're giving us now is a period with 2 half cadences and a period with a half cadence and a pack. You have to have something stronger here at the end for it to be a parallel double period, right? So if we go back to the definition of a double period, you can end a double period's first phrase with a half cadence, but the second cadence at the end has to be stronger than that. Even if you end your double period with an IAC, you still have to have something stronger than that at the end.
Okay.
Bryce, what do you think? Zach, what do you think? Max, what do you think?
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. We seem to have lost Bryce and Max, though. Hate to see their attendance points go to pot.
They're not here.
Zach's here. I know Zach's here. I can see him. I can't see the other two. All right. Because the first and third phrases have the same cadence, the third phrase in this diagram is labeled A, not A prime, even though the original A is somewhat ornamented when it returns in the third phrase. Often, several phrases will seem to belong together structurally while clearly not constituting a period or a double period. Typically, when the final cadence is not the strongest one, this is especially common in transitional passages that connect more significant thematic areas. The term phrase group is used for such situations. Before assigning this term, however, study the music, especially the cadences, closely to see whether a passage might be analyzed as a variant of some period of form. So all these composers are going to start to skew things. They're not going to want to fit into the mold. They're going to want to push the envelope, push the boundaries. So it's not all going to be easily decipherable or easy to analyze. But generally, so far, up to this period of time in music, classical era, they're following these conventions, these norms, if you will. Yeah? I don't want you to stress too much. This is like chapter 2, right? Like, you gotta know it for life, but there's more important things than analyzing parallel double periods, like ice cream. You know? We're going to talk about it because it's here, but I'd rather be eating ice cream or practicing my instrument.
I think we all would.
I mean, if this is your jam, that's cool, and you should major in theory. By the way, where is Rico? I miss that kid. All right. The sentence. Aha. As we've seen, the most important distinguishing feature of the period is the weak, strong cadence pattern formed by the endings of its two halves. It is possible to employ musical features other than cadence patterns to create larger structural units. One such unit, the sentence, is characterized by the immediate repetition or variation of a musical idea, followed by a motion toward a cadence. Unlike the period, a sentence is typically, though not always, a single phrase in length. The formal diagram of a sentence is shown next. The idea and its variant are indicated as X and X prime. So what is a sentence? The immediate repetition or variation of a musical idea, followed by a motion toward a cadence. 10-17 illustrates a sentence. The initial idea in measures 7 and 8 is immediately followed by a variation of that idea in measures 9 through 10 that is motivically similar but features a different harmonization. The final 6 measures, 11 through 16, drive to an emphatic half cadence and feature a stepwise 16th note motive first found in the left hand in measures 8 and 10.
Example 10-17.
A little wolfie for you this morning. So, we've got X, we've got X prime, and we got a bunch of other stuff that drives us to a half cadence. We're going to call that a sentence. What do you think of that? Is it buggy that we're not calling that a phrase or a period?
Example 10-17.
So it says, the relationship between the initial idea and its variant can take many forms. The variant may be an exact or ornamented repetition of the initial idea, or it may use the same harmony but transpose the melody to different chord tones. It may contrast two harmonies, dominant and tonic, for example, or two parts of a complete progression. For example, 1-5-5-1 or 1-2-6-5-1. Or it may form a sequential progression, like it does in example 10-19. Let's go to 10-18 first. Here's X.
Example 10-18.
Deceptive cadence. What do you think of all this? Harley's loving it.
Example 10-18.
I was checking my notes. So Harley says, so can there only be three phrases in a sentence, as any non-fake phrase will end in the next phrase? And Pete asks, is a sentence a series of motives? These are all great questions. I was just trying to see if my professor said anything about sentences. I'm not seeing anything. So, yeah, you could say a sentence is a series of motives. Everything's going to have motives, though. Any music is going to have motive. You could say, even the most boring minimalist music is going to have a motive of either pitch or rhythm or both. So I think of motives as like matter. Everything has it, right? So can there only be three phrases in a sentence? No, there can be as many there can be as many phrases as we want. But it doesn't really call it a phrase, though, does it?
Calls them X's.
Yeah.
The idea.
An idea. Because, unlike the period, a sentence is typically, though not always, a single phrase in length. So they're saying this whole enchilada is a single phrase made up of two ideas.
Well, an idea and its variant.
It's not a phrase because it's not cadential.
I think so. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can have multiple variants of the idea
And
in a
cadence,
sentence.
the cadence
Yeah.
comes at the end.
Yeah.
Yep. You can end a phrase with a deceptive cadence, but not always. Like that one Mozart example, faked us out. and they didn't mark it as a deceptive
Example,
cadence.
10:17.
Did I miss it? Or was it in the next one?
Yeah.
Example, 10:18.
This is the deceptive cadence right there. But it doesn't end there, so you can have it in the middle and fake us out, just so they can drive it home one more time and officially end it as a cadence. But we had an earlier example where I think maybe it was that original Mozart we listened to where they had a deceptive cadence. I think it was the original Mozart. That ended our phrase. You've given
What is DC again?
deceptive cadence. This example had 3 deceptive cadences in it.
Example, 10:11.
Here's another one. Here's the next one. So you can have deceptive cadences at the end of a phrase. Harley, I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
I think you are.
It's confusing stuff. I know, it's deep. So sentences have a repetition of an idea, but there's no cadence, right? And it usually, but not always, is a single phrase in length. All right, we're going to listen to Beethoven.
Example, 10:19.
What did we just hear? You've got the diagram of the x and the x prime, right? We finally get a half cadence at the end of 4 measures plus a beat. So this is 8 measures plus a beat.
Example, 10:19.
So, because the length of the initial idea may vary in size, the sentence itself can be of different lengths. Measures 1 through 4 of example 10-19 feature a 4-measure sentence that begins with 2 1-measure ideas. But we have an anacrusis, though, right? So I guess we're still symmetrical. The same is true of measures 5 through 8. One more time.
Example 10-19.
Okay, now I know we're looking at sentences, but is that example, would that be a period?
What
or
is a
is
period?
this like one sentence because it's the same x and x prime?
I think it is 2 sentences that differ with the final cadence. Or maybe we could call it a parallel sentence because it uses the same sentence, right? Let's see what the book says. So it says the sentence can be of different lengths. So measures 1 through 4 feature a 4-measure sentence that begin with 2-measure ideas. The same is true of measures 5 through 8. I don't see how that's different, though, because those are both 4 measures. Pete, ask your question again.
I don't see the difference between that and a period.
Okay, a period has to have 2 phrases that end with cadences. A sentence can have material that doesn't cadence. So we never cadence
Until the cadence.
until the cadence. So a sentence has one phrase. A period has 2 phrases, both which have cadences. But the idea never cadences. The idea prime never cadences. We cadence at the end of the phrase. So they're saying it's one whole thing. Where a period has 2 phrases, both of which that cadence. So the cadence is the clue, the differentiator. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm glad you circled the first cadence because I didn't see that. So I was like, oh my god, why is there like 2x per? Okay, it makes a lot more sense now.
So this is the same thing. This is like we said, this is going to be vague. This is going to be subjective. But here you can see that it's 2 sentences in a row. One that ends with a half cadence and one that ends in a perfect authentic cadence. All right. Where this is going to start to matter for you all is when you go to the 4-year institution and you take form and analysis. In my undergrad institution, you had to either take form and analysis or counterpoint. You had to take one of those 2 classes for your major. All music majors did. So,
What's the difference?
form and analysis is like this, and they talk about all the different forms. You have things like theme and variation. You have things like fugues, suites. You have things like form, binary, ternary, rounded binary, rondos, all kinds of stuff like that. Where counterpoint is strictly talking about how 2 voices go together. Let's see if I have a good counterpoint definition. Probably not. Yes, I do. Counterpoint is 2 or more melodic lines sounding simultaneously. So talking about how 2 voices go together or don't go together or contrastingly go together. That's counterpoint. I chose form and analysis. Then I didn't have to take a counterpoint class again until my doctorate, I don't think. All right, moving on. Haydn. So in this example, they're telling us that we have 4-measure long phrases. Because of the length of this passage, it might be easier to hear this sentence as containing 2 phrases with x and x prime as the first phrase and the remaining material as the second phrase. Pay attention to the 4 measures. I think that'll help.
Example 10, 20.
All right. So we had an idea. We had an idea prime that had a half cadence in it. And then we had material that led to a cadence, resulting in a 14-measure sequence. So we had 4-measure idea, 4-measure variant, and then a 6-measure material that led us to a cadence.
Example 10, 20.
I'm not sure if I agree with their identification of a half cadence.
Example 10, 20.
What'd you think? I don't like the half cadence because it's not very final sounding or even resting sounding.
Right, I was just gonna say that. And there's no distinctive chord that goes before it other than the one chord.
So I don't know. But, beginning of the chapter said 2 informed
Subjective,
musicians can
yeah.
disagree. All right. For an interesting twist, look back at example 10-19 for a moment and notice the weak, strong cadence pattern formed by this phrase. I think what we're going to do is take a pause here, let this marinate, and reconvene on this on Tuesday and just kind of have a review, a summary of everything we've gone over, because this is
You
near
mean
the. Say again?
You mean Monday?
Yeah, Monday. Did I say Tuesday? Monday.
Yeah.
So this is the very end of this section. So let's pick up on this next time. I think we're all right. I'm not overly stressed about this this chapter, but it's a good chapter because it gets us to start to look for these things. They don't have to all be crystal clear. It's not like part writing where there's certain rules. There's some subjectivity to it, And we just want you to start thinking about this kind of stuff. So don't stress over it. This is like that chapter 2 from earlier. So we're going to be all right. All right? So I'll see you all on Monday. I'll see y'all tomorrow at ear training.
Thanks, Doc B.
All right. See ya.
See you, Doc.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Dr. B,
Yeah.
I've got a piano lesson with you at 1. Can I postpone that to, like, next week?
You can.
Awesome.
You just need to go into Canvas and cancel it. If you don't, you won't get that lesson back.
Okay. How do I cancel it? Just click on it, figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be there.